This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. Today we have Jay Alexander, who's going to be joining us from San Francisco. He's been a longtime friend of mine, and I think you'll enjoy hearing what he has to say and his perspective. He is a professional mentalist who actually has his own theater out in San Francisco that's been operating for the last 7 years. And he has just an interesting perspective and an interesting life and journey that he has taken. And I have known him since he was a teenager back in Houston from many years ago. And again, he has led a really wonderful life. And I mean wonderful, W-A-N-D, from the standpoint of being a magical journey along his life. I know that you may not have necessarily heard of this gentleman because he does not necessarily hang out with magicians, go to magic conventions or that kind of a thing. He's one of these guys who is busy making a living and doing so very successfully, and does not necessarily associate with a lot of magicians. I just happened to have been in the right place at the right time wherever we had our paths had crossed and we'd gotten to know each other. So I thought I would share a conversation with another friend of mine to introduce you to this friend so he could become your friend as well. So please welcome my guest this week, Mr. Jay Alexander, here on The Magic Word. From the West Coast, I have with me Jay Alexander as my guest today, and we have been friends for, golly, I don't know how many decades, going back into Houston when he was just a young teen, and then he had moved on and done well, creating a space for himself in the mentalism world and doing magic, and has his own theater and travels doing shows down in Mexico as well as across the U.S. doing corporate events and everything. And he's someone that it may not be on your radar, but he should be. If you have not been to the San Francisco area or visited his theater, I would recommend that if you get a chance to ever to see this gentleman, because he doesn't go to a lot of magic conventions or anything, so he doesn't kind of hang out the way he used to when he was younger. But please welcome my guest today, Mr. Jay Alexander. Hello, Jay. Welcome. Hello.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me. It's really good to see you.
Good to see you after a few years over here. I was just trying to think this morning, what was the name of the gentleman who actually was the youth chairman for Houston and used to drive you guys to some meetings as Radke or
Wayne Reiki.
Wayne Reiki, that was his
Mr.
name.
Wayne, to all of us, to the kids.
Yes.
He was an amazing man who changed my life.
How so? Tell me about that.
He was an incredible mentor to a lot of magicians. Kind of interesting thing is, people know Dean Hankey, not Dean Hankey. People know, oh my God, magic. You had a magic from Baltimore. My mind just went blank. This is the worst beginning of a podcast ever. Had a magic shop in Vegas, in Baltimore, then opened up one in Vegas.
Yes. Darn it! Now you've got me on the same track as well. Denny Haney.
So Denny Haney was his first student. I was his last student from Mr. Wayne, and a lot of us in between that, But I think Denny and I were probably the two that went on to become real professional performers, full time. And there were other people that did it, but not really full time to this level for an entire career. And he was somebody who didn't just teach you the magic, but tricks. It was, how do you stand on stage? How do you use your voice? How do you, every part of it, he would work on with us, and just really work on details throughout the show. And there's a lot of things I still do on my show today that started with him.
Really?
I first started doing like a magic square routine. He taught all of us how to do a mnemonic memory system of objects and a magic square. I've been doing the magic square since I was 14 years old. And back then people didn't even know most people were like, you do that? Really? Why would you do that? And then years later, it became popular and became, one of the sponge balls of mentalism. But
right,
where it's like the super popular trick that everyone did, but no one did it. And he wanted us to be well-rounded, would work on manipulation, would work on close-up, would work on mentalism. We worked on everything together.
Now, as I recall, it was actually a separate meeting because you guys were not actually part. It didn't come to the regular meetings. You had your own junior
Right.
meetings,
Because
right?
you weren't allowed to be at the meetings in Houston until you were 18.
Hmm.
So, so he was kind of like the junior club. And,
And where did
we
you
had a lot
meet?
of people that were really serious. What do you mean? It was somebody like some townhouse meeting space, in Houston. I can't remember. I was a
Hmm.
kid. My
Do you
mother would
remember any of
drive
the other
me.
people who were part of your group?
Um, I don't think any of them stayed in Magic that were part of that group of my age.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't think any of them really are still there doing it.
I mean, I know we've had a lot of really wonderful juniors, not the least of which, of course, is uh, uh, Danny
Garcia.
Garcia, yeah,
He
and
was he was
others.
quite a bit younger than me, so I was gone by the
Correct.
time.
I was going to say you were actually before that
Yes.
when Wayne Reiki also had passed then as well, and you had moved then from Houston when you were
Yeah, I
fairly
moved the day
young
after
too.
high school. I moved to San Francisco,
Hmm.
and um, I had a scholarship to the San Francisco Art Institute, and I had Chicago or San Francisco, and I had scholarships too. And my brother was in a one-hit wonder new wave band. They were based in San Francisco, but were on tour with Depeche Mode at the time.
Hmm.
And while they were on tour, I had an apartment, and I'd come to visit San Francisco, and I was like, wow, I could go street perform. And so for me, it was more about getting here, being able to do art, street perform, and do magic, and just that's what was the exciting thing at 18 years old, to get out of Houston and go somewhere different and be able to do what I love.
Well, San Francisco is an absolutely gorgeous place. I recall I first went to San Francisco in the summer of love, 1967. I was in
Yeah.
Haight-Ashbury. I was out there as part of that for a week um, and have some stories. And I worked um, at the free clinic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for a while. I painted windows, painted in the building, and anyhow, the long story, it was a lot of fun, but I recall what that was like at the time of thinking this is just a great place, so much fun and so much love. I would love to move back out here, and I always thought that San Francisco would be a great place to move to. And then after I got out of college, I lived in Denver for about a year or two, and with my thought being, well, I want to ski, and I skied until I kind of got my fill of that, and I was about to move to San Francisco, but ended up going back to Illinois and starting a career and everything, a different change. But I never did make it out to San Francisco like was my
Yeah.
original plan.
But you were there
But
for the Summer of Love, which that's pretty neat.
67, I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a year later it became the Summer of Hate, which people don't realize that the Summer of Love and that whole hippie generation was really only 1 year in San
Hmm.
Francisco. I mean, it still went on for years. I moved there in 86, and it was kind of like Hate Street was just coming back. There was a
Yeah.
scene of art and music and really strong music scene happening, where a lot of bands, like right when I moved there, I was designing um, clubs for a couple or posters for a couple of the
Posters.
night.
I love the
And
posters, man. The artwork and everything that they had, like on in the windows and on the telephone poles,
yeah,
and I used to I peel some of them off. I've got them probably someplace in my attic, around. There were some fantastic bands, that
yeah.
yeah, Deep
So in the
Purple.
80s, there was a kind of a whole revival of that. And so I didn't have a real background in real graphic design, but I was doing art, and at my school they had a laser printer, and like they had just come out. It was a brand new thing. And so I would be able to I would design these posters and print them out. And I worked for a bunch of the clubs. And my whole thing at that point was I wanted to be the new look of the San Francisco kind of rock and roll posters. And
Hmm.
and was doing that, performing, and by doing that, it really helped me because I was in the clubs all the time, just because everyone knew me since I was making the posters for all the clubs, and it also helped. I started making my own promotional materials, and I met Bill Graham, who was the big concert promoter in the '60s at from the Grateful Dead to all those bands,
Uh-huh.
Jefferson Airplane, and he started booking me to do magic when I was 19. Anytime a band would sell out one of his venues, he would hire me. So he'd throw a party and hire me afterwards. So I ended up meeting the Rolling Stones. I worked for the Rolling Stones on 3 US tours,
Wow.
getting their VIP guests entertained. I ended up from that, met Robin Williams, worked for Robin Williams for 20 years. I got to be his opening act for events. I still do his family's Thanksgiving every year. It's been 27 years of,
Still,
I still do it. And I can pretty much, and even my best corporate clients is the early days of Apple, and Steve Wozniak was really into music. And I got to meet Steve Wozniak from that and ended up doing parties for Apple in the early days of Apple computers. And I
yeah,
still do stuff for Wozniak every so often. And all my best clients to this day can all go back to, my time on Haight Street doing posters and
right.
starting to do magic early on.
Doing some street
But
magic.
literally, my best clients can all be tracked down like a tree right back down to that time.
That is very interesting about how that can be traced back like that. And do they prefer close-up magic or stand-up or
I did a
mentalism?
little bit of everything. I mean, for the Stones, it was just close up backstage, keeping their, literally just VIP experience. And I think because of it, it really helped because I started doing corporate events pretty early in my career. But I had long hair at the time, had a very much a look, and in those days, you couldn't.
I was
Most
gonna
women
say you're
could do
more like, you
corporate
look like
events.
Andrew Goldenhirsch, you know.
We looked. Everyone thought we'd get us mixed up for each other all the time.
I'll bet.
And back in those days, and we did look like twin brothers. And so it was one of those things where most people couldn't do corporate events looking that way, but I was living in the Bay Area and all the kind of Silicon Valley tech companies, they wanted something new and hip and different.
Yeah,
And it wouldn't have worked if I lived in Houston doing oil companies
that's a good
or
point. You need a
medical.
more corporate look.
Back then, you really had to have a corporate look. You had to look like a salesperson.
Yeah.
And I early on kind of started doing these corporate events and realizing, even though I had kind of a wild look, that it's not about me. It's about them going in, making their parties fun and different by doing what I do. And so to this day, really feel that I opened a theater 9 years ago, and I everything's about hospitality to me. I feel like I'm in a hospitality business. I do it using magic,
Hmm.
and that's kind of the thing that I think part of my success with magic is that's how I look at everything is kind of creating experiences for people that are unique and different using magic, but it's about their party and making them look like the stars.
Well, that's the way it, I think should be, certainly, is that you should be flexible and let them know that they are the stars and you're not trying to focus on you. That is an issue I know. I don't know how many weddings that you've worked, but it's difficult to work a wedding because I believe that that is the day that the woman feels that that is her big day. You know, she is
Right.
now the queen for the day, and that anything that's going to take away from her is going to be a detraction. And so she doesn't want to have some people talking about the magician say, "Man, did you see that guy? He was really great." Yeah, but did you see my dress? You know, look at my hair
Right.
or whatever. You know,
Right.
so that's kind of an issue that I've had sometimes with trying to uh, work at weddings where it's difficult to try to let them know, no, I'm kind of trying to be in the background. So that's why that, yeah, I want people to recognize me, but not to be more important than what you are as a feature. You know.
Sure. Which is interesting how in England, being a wedding magician, you can make a career out of just doing weddings, but that's not a thing in America.
Right. Well, their weddings are different from the standpoint. Sometimes they would work in a breakfast and then they might work dinner on the same day of the wedding
Uh,
because they go on a little bit longer. It's more than what ours have been. So, yeah, that is a career choice that people can make over there. I mean, it's a big deal there, but nothing here.
sure.
Yeah, it's very different. Now, in working over here, when you were talking about hospitality and that um, remember somebody said some time ago about, I think it was Bob Sheets, maybe somebody had said about how that if you have a name label on your, it says Scott Wells
Right.
magician over here, that if you have something that is just a rectangular type of a badge, that it is kind of has harsh angles, even if it's rounded, but it should be more of an oval shape kind of a thing. And that was something that Disney had said. They had done a lot of uh, apparently some research and development on that for their characters and different people around their parks. And so they had
Right.
rounded oval things. And so I was just thinking about hospitality, about every little thing. however subliminal that it might be, to try to make sure that you are engaging with people and trying to get them to smile and to engage. And it seems like Disney has set the example for that, as far as recognizing that their customers are not, who are coming through, are not necessarily customers, they're family. I mean, they treat them differently than
Sure.
just somebody coming through and paying money. So I think it's the
That's
same way whenever you're performing.
you're talking about with my theater. I've read a lot of books on Disney Imagineers
Hmm.
um, and his whole process. And it's funny because I'm not even someone who loves going to Disneyland. I love the hospitality part of it, but I've thought through for my theater um, every single part from how the doorman welcomes somebody when they get to the door is scripted, it's thought through to like I look at Disney stuff a lot from how they greet them, what are the first words they say, and my doorman is always like, we have basically we're in a basement, and you go down a candlelit stairwell to the theater. So you step off the streets of San Francisco. So I have my doorman who's there. He's like welcomes them, and the last thing he says is, you're in for such a special treat," or you're get ready for a really magical evening. I want to set their excitement from before they come into the door
Hmm.
about that, and so we have red velvet ropes, we have a carpet, there's music playing as you come down the stairs, candlelit stairwell, and all of that I kind of came out of how Disney does stuff. If you're in line, there's music playing. Um, it makes a line, curve, go back and forth. He did that was all purposely done.
Hmm.
And no line, like once you get through one line, you get into another line if it's a really long ride, but you go into another room, you feel like, oh, you're closer, you're almost
Right,
there.
right.
And so it doesn't give you enough time to ever get bored. And so then for my theater, I've designed every part of the user journey to from what the doorman says, coming down the stairs, how I welcome them personally. I don't think of myself as the star of the show. I think of myself as the host of this incredible experience. That's what I want people to leave. And they're going to think I'm the star by the end of the night because I was a guy on stage. But they also feel, if you look at our reviews, they got to meet the star. They got to meet the celebrity. Not that I
Right.
think of myself as a celebrity, but that's
Of course.
that's the feeling that happens.
Yes.
Um, and I think it's really important. So they come in, I greet them at the door, I get everyone's name, and I make sure I remember every single person's name. It's 49-seat theater. I remember everyone's name, and I use it throughout the whole show. I call everyone by name because I want them to feel like they're in my house and
They're friends.
they're friends.
Hmm.
If I know they're from out of town, I give them nicknames, or I'll call them, by, hey, France or Paris, and I just call
Oh,
them by where they're from,
okay.
just to give a connection. It's to me, I want everyone to feel connected by the end of it. They didn't just see a show; they got to know me. They saw, we go in the lounge, you see close-up magic. Then everyone's brought into the theater for the show, and after the show, I do a meet and greet, and I'll take pictures with people and answer questions, and say goodbye to them by the name. And my whole thing has been, even in corporate events when I do them, I try to remember as many people's names
Hmm.
because at the end, I want them to feel like I'm their friend. There is no other choice. They're not going to hire a different magician next time. They know Jay Alexander, and it's kind of what I've always tried to create is that thing because I don't. You said earlier in the intro, I don't go to magic conventions very often. I don't hang out in the magic world. And I don't even feel I ever compete with magicians, like local magicians in the Bay Area. There's a lot of them. We have a lot of great magicians. I don't think I'm competing with anybody. I've
Hmm.
created my world and I've built my customer base, and that's it. My customers aren't going to go hire some other magician usually.
Well,
It's
talking about remembering people's names, I think that's important whenever that I leave a party after I've been doing some strolling or something. As I'm walking through towards the end, just towards the door, then I'll say, "Hey, thanks, Steve," or "Thanks, Judy," and "Julie, this was wonderful meeting you. I appreciate it." And they give me a double take, like, "How does he remember my name? That was 45 minutes ago. That was an hour ago." So the importance of remembering people's names is immeasurable benefit because in the future they're going to say, "Gee, if he remembered me, I should remember him." And then they start recalling, what I did, and that way
Right.
they're more apt to book you later then too.
Right. It's a thing. I mean, I first heard it from in the magic world, but it was Maya Angelou quote of it's not what you do, it's how you make people feel. And
Right.
I really swear by that when I'm performing.
Well, I think it would be particularly difficult then, Jay, when you're actually on stage because you're looking at this vast group of 49 people who are out there, as opposed to whenever you're walking around doing some strolling. If you're doing strolling, that you're interacting one-on-one, whereas there, it sounds like that you are interacting with some of the people individually. You're not interacting with all 49 of them, but do they have
Sure.
name badges on or something then you're
Nope.
saying? It's
I just
okay.
I just
Hardwire their
just
names.
hardwired to remember
Yeah.
their names, and as soon as they walk out, I forget them again. But I
Yeah.
just do a couple mnemonic memory system things. But now I'm
Right.
pretty good at just looking at them. They say their name and say it a couple times in my head, say it out loud
Right.
one or two times to them, and I've got it.
Well,
And the
when
trick
you,
is not saying it in a way that sounds forced. It's
Mhm.
not like, good to see you, Scott. Scott, how are you? Blah, blah, Scott. Saying it 20 times,
Right.
which does help, but using it naturally, saying
Mhm.
it naturally, but saying it a few times and does help.
That's what I do whenever I try to teach people like how to remember names, and that is of reinforcing that by saying that naturally as
Right.
many times as you can. Starting off just with your server, with your at a restaurant, and your server comes over and says, "Hi, my name is Stephen." Then you say, "Well, hi, Stephen. What are today's specials?" And
Right.
Stephen, can I have some more iced tea or whatever it is? And so you're
Sure.
calling my name, and not. It's showing you have the person also that you respect them for one, and also you get a little bit more attention. I think when you use someone's name, there's nothing
Sure.
better than the sound of your own name. You know, when you started the theater, what made you think this is going to be a good idea, and why there?
So the year before I opened the theater, I was in doing corporate events and cruise ships, and I just that year I traveled to 34 countries. A lot of
Goodness
them were
sakes,
also. It sounds like more than it is because sometimes it was in the
sounds like a lot.
Caribbean. We're in 5 countries,
Yeah,
within a week because every island was owned by
yeah,
a different
close,
country.
right,
But it was when I added together, I was doing a lot of traveling, and there was a magic theater in my space. A guy opened up. He wanted to get out of it, and um, and I'd fill in every so often for him just for fun. And he asked if I was interested. At first, I thought, no, not at all. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, if I could bring my corporate clients here to my theater, and have the public shows, I think it'd be really great. And to be able to go there and have my show set, be able to control the music, control everything, it'd be interesting. So I thought I'd probably do it for 2 years, and now it's been 9 years, and I love it. I mean, there's times where there's things about it where I'm like, all right, I don't love employees. I don't like managing people. Um, I I just want to do my thing. I want my employees to do what they're
right,
supposed to on their own. It's like if you see
right.
trash on the floor, pick it up. Um, you don't want to have to tell people to do things like that. And but it's been amazing. I feel like my show's better than ever. The first before the pandemic, we were doing 7 to 9 shows every week.
Wow.
And so just getting that kind of stage time
Hmm.
where you start realizing it's like, oh, I'm doing the exact same trick, but it's completely different. And I looked at all of my heroes and the people I think are amazing in magic, whether it's Matt King, who's done his show so many times, where it's like, oh, every moment is great. Um, Harry Anderson or the juggler Michael Davis. I always loved that every word he said was was a setup of a joke, setup of a trick, or the punchline. And there's
Hmm.
no wasted words. And so that's kind of what I wanted. And by being able to do the show that often, uh, you start getting it.
Well, that's true that flight time gives you a lot of good
Uh,
advantages, and having a theater where you can do that over and over and over, much like I had the Magic Island in Houston, where I could work frequently and do the
Right.
show so many times a week, and really you learn what is bad and what works and what doesn't, over and
Sure.
over. Now, with
And
you,
there's times for things that I have times where it's like, no, I really like this trick, but you do it and it doesn't work the way you think.
Hmm.
And it's like, I'll put it in the middle of the, you used to put it in the middle of the show somewhere and just keep working it. And then all of a sudden it's like the best routine in the show. But it's just finding where that moment is. And,
Right.
um, and for me, I don't change material that often. I'm somebody who just, I like to polish and keep polishing and work on every breath and every pause in the
Hmm.
show to see how, if I pause longer, does it make the trick more powerful and build tension and release tension. So having the theater doing that many shows gives you that kind of that playground to do it in.
Now, you are obviously the featured guest there. I was thinking about Steve Spill's place down in Santa Monica that he used to have
Right.
years ago, that he was the sole person who would be performing. I assume that you're the only person, you don't bring in people?
For the most part, I'm starting now. The first couple of years, it was just me. Every so often, if I was sick or something, and Alex Ramon or David Gerard would fill in. Um, and now they're, both of them are busy enough that I don't too often. I started now, if I take a vacation, I used to just close up, and now I'm trying to put people in a little bit more. So I have Jade will fill in for me. There's a magician out of Chico, Chris Bent, who's really good. Audiences love him. Most people don't know who he is. He so he's been filling in for me every so often, but for the
What's his
most
name?
part, Chris Bentz,
Bent, B-E-N-T. No,
Bentz,
oh,
and and it's Kris, and he's just he's more of a street performer, but and a lot of times my favorite acts are a lot of times street performers, but they
mhm.
don't know how to be in a theater. He really has been able to transition really well into putting on a suit, looking nice, but having that same street show energy. And a lot of people that do street shows can't do 45 minutes or not do 75 minutes.
That's true.
And that's the thing when I realized when I opened the theater, there are a lot of guys that are great from the Magic Castle, but when they go to do my theater, it's like, no, they even if you do cruises, might do two 45-minute sets. Doing two 45s is completely different than 75 minutes
Agreed.
because you have a different, you know,
Energy, you have to keep an energy
there is.
in the way that you would plateau and have more peaks, and you can't try, you got to get rid of the valleys, but try to just keep it moving along and keeping it fresh and exciting,
Right.
that people still want to watch the last 15 minutes of your show.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of people where I'll talk to them about filling in for me. And they're like, well, I could put in this trick or I could put in that trick. And it's like putting in a
No,
trick isn't the thing. It's exactly, it's like you need a beginning, middle, and end. And how does the whole show flow together? And it's like, and one more trick isn't what you need.
right. Yeah,
It's
it has to be structured that way. Well, unfortunately, there are not a lot of venues that offer the opportunity to do like a 75 to 90-minute
right,
show. Most are encouraging you to do, we just want you for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, like at the castle
right,
or some other places. If you're doing a corporate show, you got 45 to 50 minutes. And so, it's after dinner or something. I mean, you're not doing a longer show.
sure.
So I don't know really where you can go to work on a longer show unless you talk with, I just happen to think maybe a corporate client, when you are talking with them, of saying that, well, my show can be 45 minutes, or I can go twice as long for about for maybe even the same price. Maybe you want to get some
But
experience.
that doesn't make most, like for most corporate events, because if I do a corporate event, I still don't do an hour and 50, I do 75. I go back to 45
Uh-huh,
for a
that's what I
corporate
do.
event because I feel like that's usually what's best for their experience.
So I think so. That's about their attention span
Yeah. And especially if it's an after dinner thing, they've already been
and
having dinner for
drinking.
a long time. They're, after 45 minutes, you're ready to get up if
Yeah,
that's the case. It's different when you're in my theater. I have lights, I have sound cues. For a small theater, I probably have more production than most shows. And at the same time, when I first put together the show, I'm like, I want to have a show that it's like an acoustic performer opposed to a band, a big rock and roll band. I'm like,
hmm,
I want to be able to do the best acoustic set possible and then slowly start putting in production so it makes it feel like a big rock and roll show. But if I didn't have the production, it's still an incredible show.
right.
How there's some shows where if you take away the production, there's no heart to it or no soul to the show. And I'm like, nope. I want that first, and then you add production value.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. That you have to have the show and then kind of add to it on top
Yeah.
of that. I mean, you have your act and then add some music and whatever else that's going to add to the show. Then from there, with your show, is it once a week now? You say you were doing
We
like
do, no, we do 5 shows a week.
5 shows. Okay,
It's
so
every
COVID
two
actually.
shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday, 1 show Sunday. But like then this week we have a private buyout tonight and tomorrow. So Wednesday and Thursday. So we've added 2 shows. So this week it'll be 7, but 5 public shows.
Okay. And I
And
know you were talking, you were down in Mexico just recently. So in
yeah,
those cases, do you have someone come in then, or do you?
that was I had a show and then we decided to take a little vacation, so I put somebody else in
Hmm.
last weekend. Um, and then I don't usually take off this much. And then this coming week, I'm doing a halftime show, and I've been doing this year halftime shows. And usually I put someone else in. And this time I just said, we close for the night and for the weekend. And I have Jade there actually Saturday night for just 1 show.
When you say
And
halftime show, you mean like for the
yeah, I did
basketball
like I
team?
just did. I was in Houston I did the Rockets halftime show, the
Okay.
NBA. So I've been doing these. Don't do a lot, but I've now done like um, last year I did 3 of them, and I've got another 3 coming up. And just the NBA halftime shows where they usually would have like a circus act or some silent act. And I came up with a few things that work really well. That even though I'm talking, doing minimalism, it's stuff that I'm doing with the entire audience.
Well, that's what I was about to ask of whether there are a lot of logistics involved with that, if you're having to bring in illusions, but you're actually just doing some mentalism.
No, so with my whole thought with it when I first talked about it was before I ever did one, and the first one I did was actually for the San Jose Giants, which is the minor league team for the San Francisco Giants, and um, the manager I know, and he said, "Hey, would you come on July 4th once you do some magic?" And we talked about it a lot, and I was like, I could bring an illusion. I still have a warehouse full of illusions I never use anymore. And my first thought was, do I do something big? And then I was like, with the iMag screen, even as an illusion on down on the field, it still looks like a postage stamp. So I'm
Hmm.
like, I went the opposite way and thought, let's go more close up. And I just go through with the cameraman beforehand. I'm like, you're gonna go to their hands, go to their face, go to their hand, go to their face, go to my face, and we just choreograph what's gonna happen. And I do it's more of a kind of a close-up thing, that close-up first that I do in my hand. And I always ask if there's a local celebrity. So like the first one I did, I lucked out. They had a famous couple from the WWE. I had no clue who they were, these wrestlers, but they were huge and have their own TV shows
Hmm.
and um and I did kind of like a haunted pack and and something else in their hands. And the guy I do it, and the guy just because he knows how to fall backwards onto his back, I did check it. His mouth goes open, and he just falls straight on his back. The crowd went crazy,
How funny is that?
and then I do an interactive type trick with the entire audience that happens in their hands, and it's always like, I always end with if this is correct, a standing ovation would not be out of line. So you have an entire stadium standing up screaming.
Wow.
It becomes really fun, and it's very interactive.
I was just talking with someone recently who was saying their issue with trying to work from a halftime show like that, whether you're at a big stadium or football field or a basketball court, is the reverb. That is the echo. Whatever that you're speaking, you have to have it timed right because you're hearing your voice come back like about a word late or
Yeah, you have to
something.
talk slow and deliberate.
Yeah. So is that something that you practiced or that you were aware of, or did that surprise you the first
I
time?
was
Or
aware of it, and I kind of knew it and went in and even when we were talking before, like in my theater about like trying to connect with people, as I'm doing it, I'm really trying to look at entire sections and scan like I'm looking at everybody.
yeah.
And it's and that's kind of one of the things I got back from one of the head guys from that's in charge of entertainment of the first NBA game I did. He's like, wow, it really looked like you looked at everybody.
Hmm.
And it was, he goes, I had two people that work for the team that were in there that said they felt a connection with you.
That they were
And
working,
I'm
you were
like,
working for them. Yeah.
and I'm like, I didn't know who they were, but I'm like, I'm trying to look at the top balcony and really just kind of like take sections and really look. I remember when I was younger, I went to a magic lecture, and there's a guy talking about how to look like you're looking at the audience. And he goes, and he first said, when you can fake sincerity, you've made it. And
Hmm.
I'm like, why don't you just be sincere? Was my first thought as a teenager. I'm like,
Sure.
like, why would you fake sincerity? And then I remember I'm talking about holding something low but looking high, and then holding something high and looking at the people in front, and pretending to look at the people in the front or the people in the back. And ever since then, I was like, no, look at the people. Really try to look at people in the eyes, even if you're scanning in a big audience. And I personally think it makes a huge difference to really believe in your mind, I'm talking to everybody.
I may have been at that same lecture. I want to say that might have been Vito Lupo or Jeff McBride who
Yes.
said that,
Yes.
because I
Vito
remember
Lupo.
them saying, yeah, they
Was
would
it?
hold this up and it's like you're talking about this. And then when you turn your head, they're still looking there. And then you kind of move your gaze from one place to the other with your hands. So you kind of keep in focus. And there was another thing that one or the other of those gentlemen had said in another lecture once about keeping the focus on someone throughout the whole sentence. In other words, rather than scanning back and forth as you're talking like this, that you're
Talk to
actually
people.
finishing a sentence talking like this. And then when you're
Yeah,
ready
they
for
go to the
another
next.
sentence, then you finish the sentence with that person. And then you engage someone else over here and finish that sentence. So this way that a thought seems to go towards that area.
Right. I think that's a great one.
Hmm. Um, but that seemed to kind of help me then too. Boy, this is bouncing all over the place, but before I forget it, did you ever hear of or go to Earthquake
I
Muldoon, I think it
did.
was.
Yep. It was
Tell
still
me about
open
that
when I moved
place.
to
That
San
was in San
Francisco.
Francisco, and that was
Yeah,
a
it
legendary
was.
place. And then I'd heard about where they had all those Carter posters that Mike Caveney had found and all that story. But go ahead, tell me
Yeah, so
about what you know about it. Or Martin Lewis.
Phil Temple and Mike Cavey split the collection. So yes, I know a lot about it. So it's um, the Clute brothers. There was a guy who was a famous jazz musician, and they had this club, and Earthquake McGoon's was in the basement. Um, and so it's kind of a weird thing. I have the warehouse. It's a storage unit, but it's a storage unit in the middle of nowhere. The storage unit was where, when the collection was found, they took everything and kept it in the storage unit. Then Phil Temple took over the storage unit, and him and Mike Caveney split up all the posters, and Mike got half, Phil Temple got half. And Phil Temple had this amazing collection of the posters and of magic sets. And anytime a magician came to town, that they would go to storage unit to look at all the stuff. There's photos of Siegfried and Roy in the storage unit, David Copperfield, Doug Henning at separate times,
Yeah.
all coming to look at this collection.
Huh.
And it's kind of funny because I have these photos of all of them on the wall in my storage unit. And so when Phil, right before he passed away, I took over the unit. It's it's a storage unit. It's all it is.
Yeah.
But it's so fun to walk in, and whenever I'm there, and look at the fact that every great magician from the past has all been in this little space in the middle of nowhere outside of San Francisco. It's 45 minutes out of San Francisco, just a storage unit, but it has incredible magical history that's been through this place.
Well, are there any posters or anything still left in the
I have a
unit
few.
currently? Hmm.
And a lot of the ones in my theater came from. I have a lot of the Carter posters that were left over from him or hanging in
Hmm.
my theater. And the Carter family comes every year and does a family reunion at my theater.
Really? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What time of the year is that? Like spring or something? Or?
Um, I think it's on summertime they come, and
Hmm.
and every year they're like, most of the people in the family have no clue who Carter was or is or really
Yeah.
care. It's just the Carter family you know, reunion, and they come to the theater
And they
and
can see those posters
see
too.
the posters. But it's like when I ask them questions about him, most of them have, it was a great great grandfather type of thing, and they're like, I don't know. I heard he's a magician.
As I said, jumping all over the place. You mentioned something earlier about the Magic Square,
Yeah.
and I recall a series of not cassette tapes, they were CDs, I guess, some years ago, in which a magician was asking these 20 questions to like about 40 different magicians or mentalists in
When I was
particular.
looking, I remember those tapes.
Yeah, you remember those?
Yeah.
And one of the things he was asking was about the Magic Square. And do you use it? And do you think it's an opener or a closer or a middle or what are your
I've
thoughts?
used it in everything. Now it's in the middle of my show, and I do most of the time I do a birthday square, so it ends up that the
Hmm.
corners are a person's birthday. Um, but not always. I've used it as openers. I've years ago when it was my closer of my show. I, I I always think of things when people talk about like, is this trick a good closer or opener? And I'm like, it depends on the rest. What else is in your
Mm,
show?
yeah,
And I'm a big believer of putting something that's so different than the rest of your show to help get a standing ovation. I always feel like if you have an element of danger or change the mode. If your whole show is high energy, do something low energy. If your whole show is low energy, do something high energy for the ending. I just feel like that kind of it changes the feeling of the show. And um, as I personally do, you always feel that way. It's and so, and right now, like in my show, it's not that I take the energy, I'm high energy right before the end. I take the energy really low for the second to last trick, and then I go back super high again. Um, and, but it's, so like, I always, when people say, is a good ending, good closer or good opener, I'm like, what's in your show? I don't know.
yeah, right.
It's,
Depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
yeah,
Because I was just thinking you mentioned about maybe towards the end of your show of having high or low energy, having something different from the rest of your show. And I like to think that I have a high energy show, but there have been a few times in which I have closed my show with a gypsy thread, and it's very contemplative and about my life and about
right.
my journey and my children, my wife passing, and different things. So it gets to be very serious, and I leave them on that note.
And I think that's great. And that usually, I think, because it touches your heart afterwards.
It
Like,
does, because afterwards, that's the thing that people tend to remember because it's the
yeah,
last thing they saw, I guess. And they'll come
right.
to me and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry," or I hope that you're, you're doing great. It appears, or whatever. Then that just it engages the audience more if I am more personal, and I put that at the end as opposed to somewhere in the middle that they might later forget about it.
Absolutely. And even with that, with what you said, it might be because it's at the end, but it also might be that one thing you do that's different. If you, my show is almost almost all mentalism. If I put a magic trick in the show, if I didn't matter what it was, torn store newspaper, that would be the trick people would go away talking about. If I
Hmm.
did all magic and did a mentalism trick in the middle of the show, they will talk about the mentalism trick. It's like I always believe it's that one thing that you did different is
So,
kind of
so kind of like when Kreskin would do the linking finger rings, that'd be his only magic trick, and the rest would be all mentalism. Do you think people
right.
would remember the linking finger rings?
Yeah. I think a lot of times that's what happens with people's shows.
Hmm.
You also need to have a trick that tells an entire story, an easy story for someone else to tell. I
True.
think about this a lot. I think when storytelling and magic got popular years ago, and everyone wanted to be a storyteller, and I would think, I don't want to be a storyteller. I want to be a story maker. Like I thought a lot about like I want to
Hmm.
give people stories that they leave wanting to tell, and
Yes.
that's why there's tricks that I don't do anymore. But like I think card unsealing magically isn't the best trick. As a thing people remember, it's the best, one of the best tricks in the world. Like
Right.
you, it's, and half the time people remember it wrong. They remember, oh yeah, I need to pick a card, sign it. Then he said, look up. They forget you threw the cards up, and they're like, they said, look up, and my card signed is on the ceiling. Um, and it's I did it for years, and I mean, I have some of the best stories of my life was actually with that trick, and it's because that was a great story that they could tell afterwards. So when I'm working on stuff for my show a lot, I think simplify the concept so someone can tell the story afterwards.
That's a beautiful thing and well said then too, Jay, because there are so many people I have seen who will do a trick and it's like, okay, count down this number of things and then you add the color, spell the color or whatever, all that kind of a thing. The process just takes way too much time and it's not
Right.
entertaining and it can't be related in just a simple sentence like you're saying, my signed card ended up on the ceiling. I mean, how simple is that?
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to explain to someone that about how this card ended up in this guy's wallet after he did such and such.
And it's not the tricks I don't do these tricks, but like a bill and lemon is a wonderful thing because they could say their bill ended up
That's right.
inside the lemon. It's so simple, sounds so great as a story to tell. And so I think about that a lot with every new thing goes to my show. It's like, all right, what's the story someone could tell here? And and even with mentalism, I do sometimes like to have, and this happens, and all these things are connected, but it also muddies up what happened. Sometimes it's like just which hand is it in? It's an easy concept. People play that game since they were kids.
Do you think the storytelling can get to be a little bit monotonous? In other words, that after you finish one story and then you start into another story and then over and over and over with just different stories?
I think so. And I'm not saying don't tell any stories because I actually have
Sure.
a long story on my show that I do, like it's almost like a TED Talk-ish story that really connects me with the audience. And I think it's important to have that to get the audience to know who you are, um, and open up and have some vulnerability. But also, I'm like, no, so I think a lot of magicians are scared of doing magic.
Hmm.
And, and that's why they'll try to add it, and I have a lot of comedy on my show, but I always am careful of where does the joke go, not to take away from the magic.
Hmm.
And because I think sometimes people, or especially you see with younger magicians that want to kind of come out and do a spoof of magic. And it's like, you're only doing a spoof because your magic's not good enough to do it on its own most of the time. I mean, every so often people are doing it.
It's kind of like a clown that's just
Yes.
using magic, and yeah, I tend to agree. I want to find out also, what do you perceive as your powers whenever you're performing? What do you try to make your audience believe that you have the ability to for psychokinesis or that you
I'm not psychic.
clairvoyant?
Now it's gotten a little too popular and people make fun of it, but I've been doing this for many, many years. I like to do things that could be real, in my show. So I do multiple speed math routines, but they're fast, high energy, fun because that can get boring. Um, they're all like weird esoteric things, reading people's body language. I love body language routines.
Hmm.
It's gotten a little too popular and too many people are doing it that it kind of seems like a trope. But I just think it really is fun for the audience to see. And when they feel like, as you're doing it, that you're kind of, I show people, I'm like, do you see how they just did that? I want people to go away feeling like they're a little bit smarter. And I know
Yes.
that there's a fine line between you're lying just like you're lying if you're saying you're psychic. But, I'm okay with this lie for some reason a little bit more. And I feel like I'm on a stage with bright lights and in a costume and music cues. If you're taking away that I'm really psychic, and I do say I'm not actually in the show, and people leave all the time saying, you say that, but you are. And, but I personally feel better saying that I'm not.
Uh-huh.
I know there's arguments of why that's wrong to do. It's like, and also, if that's really the case, why am I even doing these kind of routines? And it's just like, so that's why I kind of couch it all in human lie detection and um, type of routines or speed math or things. It's like, yeah, he could do that. Um, I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain it. So yeah, I mean that's basically it. It's just that is how I couch all my stuff.
Yeah, I think it's important that you kind of lead the audience along so this way that they can, if A equals B and B equals C and C equals D, then A can equal D, but you're bringing them along the way. It's like, okay, well, I can, like if you start off, let's say with a magic square and you talk about that being mathematics, okay, I can buy that. And then you go into something else that's a little bit more difficult. And before long, uh, I mean, it's not like that you jump right into your most difficult effect to begin with to
Right.
make that believable. that you kind of lead them along to believe that you have those powers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the past 2 years, I did a kind of more of a seance show in October because I thought, all right, the same audience come all the time. How do we get them back? And sometimes you need, and I have people, a lot of people that have come 8, 9, 10 times to my theater and bring people back all the time. But I'm like, all right, let's do a completely 100% new show. So I did a seance show, and I thought, it's Halloween. I'm going to go all the way with it. And first show, I had a woman come up to me, and she's just, afterwards, she hugs me, and she starts to cry, and she goes, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that I brought this feeling out in you. And she's like, thank you so much. It was so great to get to feel like I was back with my grandmother.
Wow.
And I'm just like, this is not what I personally want. I feel like I did the job I set out to do, and now I'm like, I personally hate this. And and it was just like, no, I went too far. And I know for other people, it's like great. And I saw the power in doing that. And I'm like, it's addicting. I could see why people go that direction.
Sure.
And at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to be responsible because the same way she hugged me and thanked me, I feel like you can mess somebody up also.
You pretty much can. That's true. I recall an article that Eric Mead had written in the Magic magazine many years ago after he had broken his hand and he was not doing close-ups, so he started doing mentalism behind the bar. And he
Right.
found that that was so much more powerful than what he had been doing, and people were believing some of the stuff that he was doing, and it kind of changed his way of thinking.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of times you don't realize, yeah, what you're doing, how it impacts a person. But like you said, the person comes up to you and gives you a hug. It's like, yeah, I've never felt closer. It was
Right.
lovely. So do you
And
do seances now regularly? That's your,
we know this. So that was the first year we did it. And then that last year we did it again, but I made it complete. I didn't go as far with it being psychic and talking to the dead. And, it's, like we advertised it as that. People want to see that kind of stuff. I
yeah,
just personally don't feel comfortable doing it.
yeah.
And
Okay.
so we
Well,
did
there,
I did more of a Halloween-esque magic show, the set, minimalism magic show the second year, just because I was like, I don't want to push that envelope.
sure, you need to determine what your character is. Jamie Salinas and I have been doing, or we're doing, seances in Houston for a dozen years. And when we were doing those, we determined early on who our character was. And we were basically not really ghost hunters so much as just we were inquiring is what is really out there kind of a thing.
Right.
So in other words, we weren't trying to be a medium. We weren't trying to bring somebody back. We weren't having someone speak through us. Uh, we weren't trying to bust them, with all kinds of um, electronic gadgetry or whatever necessarily. We were questioning just like the people who were coming in saying, well, is this real or not real? And
Right.
so we wanted to kind of feel that, or I guess, um, relate really to the audience about what they were feeling as well. It's like, is this real or not? And so once you determine what your character is, then maybe you can handle that a little bit easier. So what I'm saying is, if you're thinking
Sure.
about doing it, then again,
We'll do it again next year, just not to I won't go back to doing more of the medium because I was going a little further with like the medium type of thing and just
uh-huh,
like, you know, their grandmother, with boiling down, getting them to talk about their grandmother or someone that they loved in their life that they lost, and getting them to boil it down to, you know, telling me about them, and boiling it down to one word, and then
right.
I'm like, no way.
Hmm.
I go, I don't know what this meant, but today I was having lunch, and when I was having lunch, they handed me a receipt, and there was a word written on it. I thought it was kind of weird, and I just folded it up, put it in my pocket, and I reach in my pocket and I pull out this receipt and I hand it to them and I go, I think this is for you. And they open it up and it says that one word is written like in Sharpie across the receipt.
Hmm.
And it's after them talking about it so much and opening up to me. And I'm like, I just had this person open up to me, open up their heart. And then I used a magic trick on them to kind of make them believe. It's just like,
You're
I just
stomping
felt
on
like
them.
that's not cool. It's
Uh-huh.
and so after doing it the first weekend, I was just like, I don't like this. And then I slowly tamed it down. And at the same time, I'm like, I think the original way I did it was the better show for people.
Hmm.
They were moved, but I'm like, I just personally couldn't do it, go
Yeah.
that far with it.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, with that. Well, with your theater, by the way, for people who want to buy tickets, where can they go to?
San Francisco magictheater.com. And we have shows every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're the number one show in San Francisco of any kind, not just magic,
Really?
of any theater show. We're the highest rated show, over 1,500 reviews on TripAdvisor, 1,500 on Yelp, 1,500 on Google. And, we're there all the time.
Well, you said that there were other magicians who are in and around San Francisco, and as I recall, there was another gentleman, a friend of mine, taller, redheaded guy. He had a show in a theater in a hotel for a while. I can't remember his name. Uh,
You're talking about Walt Anthony years ago?
yes.
Walt Anthony had the show. I mean,
Hmm.
he's passed away, but yeah, years ago he had a show, and we have four full-time, you know, magic theater shows happening.
Hmm.
Interestingly, there's more full-time magic shows in San Francisco than there are comedy clubs. Where it used to be comedy clubs was a thing.
More magic theaters than there are comedy clubs in San
Yes.
Francisco. Huh.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Well, obviously there's an audience for it.
And I I don't know why it is, but I mean, comedy for a long time, this was like one of the big cities of the United States for comedy,
Hmm.
and there was just a ton of comedy clubs. But now, yeah, it's I think magic is in a golden era right now of you know people doing it. And I just think things go through waves, and right now, a lot of magicians have learned they can make a living doing a full-time show.
And I think it's a good idea also, what you have found, that is to have your own theater so you don't have to travel around as much as you did from before. So I'm sure after traveling as much as you did, and then you said, what was that? How many years ago? 7 years ago that you,
9 years ago.
9 years ago that you finally settled down. It's like, wow, this has got to change your lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to be home, and then once I was home, it was kind of like I decided I wanted to live in a place that felt like I was on vacation,
Yeah.
because so many people just go to nicer places for vacation, and I'm like, we ended up buying a very weird, sold our house. My kids went to college, and I bought a floating home in Sausalito, California, which is right across the Golden Gate Bridge.
Mm.
And it's, the house literally floats on the water, goes up and down. It's not a boat, there's no engine,
Hmm.
but it was just one of those things where I wanted something different. And when I got home at night, I could just sit there, and there's sea lions outside and pelicans, and you feel a
Wow.
billion miles away from San Francisco, but I'm just 5 minutes over the Golden Gate Bridge from the city.
Wow. That's sounds like you've found paradise out there.
I love it.
Well, congratulations and good job. And thank you very much, Jay. I appreciate you being my
Thank
guest.
you.
The name of my podcast is called The Magic Word. And so I always like to close by asking, what is your magic word? What's important to you?
Um, ooh, that's so much. I really, I say it a lot, and it sounds kind of like a trope, but I really do think it's connection. It
Hmm.
really is to me, that connection. And I love at my theater having every night we'll have multi generations. They're having fun together. And
Hmm.
at first, I didn't want kids in my theater at all, and I still don't want too many kids because I don't want to feel like a kid show. But I love when I have a kid, their parents, grandparents, all having just as much fun. Where it's not entertainment that's dumbing down for the adults, or it's dumbing it down so the kids enjoy it and the adults are having fun because the kids are having fun. When you see everyone laughing, having a great time, and amazed at the same time,
Hmm.
to me, that's that kind of connection with between me and them and the audience.
Right.
It's I feel that's true magic. And I love that.
That everybody is connected. Yes.
Everyone's connected.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I would say
That's a
connection.
good word. And that's not the first time that I've heard that. I believe that Jeff McBride even had said that was his word
Oh,
then
really?
too.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you're a good company there then too. Well, thank you again, Jay. Appreciate it, and good luck in the future for your theater then as well.
Thank you. Take care.
So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Jay Alexander. This is Scotty out. Thank you very much, Jay, for being my guest this week on the Magic Word Podcast. That was just phenomenal. We were kind of bouncing around a little bit on that, but I think that your viewpoint on the history of magic there in San Francisco has been invaluable. I was very interested in hearing the information you're telling us about Earthquake McGoons. That was quite a place at a particular point in history of magic. And I also want to congratulate you on the success there of your theater in San Francisco, and I hope that it continues on as well. And for those of you who want to go, if you're actually out in the San Francisco area, be sure to visit going to the website here, and you will then be able to purchase your tickets for the show and go see him do his mentalism as well. Very good entertainer, been around for a long number of years. And as he said, he's #1 on TripAdvisor for any theater type of thing. And it's interesting. I thought too that there are more magic theaters than there are comedy clubs in San Francisco. That's encouraging to me. So until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember, value your connections. This is Scotty out.